Takes a seat. Elon Musk Optimus is back in the spotlight, sweeping promises about ending poverty, splashy demos, and a price tag aimed at the mass market. We sort hype from hardware. Investor Mark Mobius warns the AI leaders could drop 30 to 40%. We put his record and your money in context. Internal documents say Meta is making billions of dollars from, get this, scam ads, even as it battles a cleanup. Debt is the through line. 50-year mortgages pitched as relief, while big tech finances the AI boom with complex borrowing. And dictionary.com's word of the year is 6-7. The inside joke no one can define, but everyone repeats. All that and more today on Filtered. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hi, and welcome to Filtered. This is Sunday, November 9th, 2025. Thanks so much for joining me. We are live as we are every day, a little later start than usual in the early afternoon. Usually do these in the morning live, and then it's pushed out on demand on all social media platforms, as well as all podcasting platforms. Getting a little bit of a late start today. Nice Sunday brunch, beautiful day here in South Florida, some wonderful pickleball, and I think I won 6 out of 9 matches today. So wonderful time in the pickleball course. Hope you're having a great Sunday weekend wherever you are. Let's dive right into issue 1. Tesla's robot dream, Optimus or overreach? According to recent business reports, Elon Musk says the Optimus humanoid robot could, quote, eliminate poverty, work around the clock, and be 5 times more productive than humans, with a future price somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 at scale. We've also seen stagey moments, handing out Halloween candy, and even a kung fu cameo with Jared Leto, one of my favorite actors. But Tesla concedes Optimus is not ready for mass production. That's the tension. The engineering choke points are dexterous hands, safety, and reliable autonomy in messy real-world environments. The test isn't a stage routine. It's months of repetitive, dull, dangerous work done safely, cheaply, and at scale. Here's another reality check. Timelines and promises have slipped before. The 1 million robo-taxis by 2020 goal that Elon Musk promises never materialized. A coast-to-coast self-driving demo by 2017 that Musk promised never appeared. Feature complete full driving promised in 2019 still needs active supervision. Level 5 autonomy has been next year for years. The paid Tesla network of money-earning robotaxis hasn't launched. Solar roof mass rollout schedules slipped repeatedly. The Model 3 ramp to 5,000 cars per week hit so-called production hell before stabilizing. Hyperloop and Boring Company transit promises fizzled in Los Angeles. The next-gen Roadster timeline slid years. And Neuralink's broad human use timelines were optimistic long before small early trials. Optimus may be transformative, but the scoreboard is jobs done, not sizzle reels. Okay, what's the real message here? Am I excited about Optimus and the idea of robots doing all the dirty work you and I don't want to do? Absolutely. But do I put any faith in Elon Musk actually delivering a promise on time for anything? Absolutely not. This could be 5, 10, 50 years away. Let's dig a little deeper. Now, I'm well aware that in some quarters, any criticism of Elon Musk is treated the same way some intense religious followers react if you criticize the founder of their religion, i.e., blood shoots out of their ears, they go crazy, they think you are insane, and all they want to do is attack you. So I understand that Elon Musk has a fanatical following, and he does deserve credit for arguably being one of the most, if not the most successful entrepreneur in the history of the world. So, yes, he's had tremendous accomplishments with Tesla and with SpaceX, PayPal, a lot of other ventures. But he does have a disturbing habit of making promises, quite often 18 months, 2 years, 5 years from now, and then never delivering. He's done it again and again and again. And a gullible media and podcasters like Joe Rogan just lap it up. Tell me more, the great Elon. You're a genius, Elon. Wow, that's wonderful. I can't wait. And very rarely do they go back and point out, well, on this date, you promised this. 18 months later, it didn't happen. He's rarely called to account. Now, I outlined some of these specific promises that he's broken before. But again, just one big one, 1 million robotaxis by 2020. Well, that was 5 years ago. Never happened. Now, many people and stock analysts like Scott Galloway now believe that Tesla is essentially a meme stock. Its valuation is so astronomically high, it bears no correlation to any kind of similar car company. And that it's essentially game stock is what it is. It's people investing just on hype and on a belief that Elon is some sort of a Marvel character from a movie. And yeah, he has done marvelous things. There's no doubt about it. But are we actually going to see robots? Now, let me be very clear. I'm all in favor of technology. I'm not a Luddite. I'm not someone who says, oh, these robots are going to kill us, and it's going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator, and we got to do everything we can to stop it. No, I look forward to a day when a robot can wash dishes, can provide basic health care for people, can provide home health care for people who otherwise would have to be warehoused in very low quality condition retirement homes and assisted living facilities. And I look forward to a time when many, many low paid home healthcare workers can be trained and perhaps find gainful employment, higher income employment in other industries. Hope that happens. There's no guarantee of that happening, but I certainly hope that that can happen. I have family members who are in need of home health care workers, and a robot could pick them up if they fall down at 3 in the morning, whereas I, living in another city, can't do that. A robot, as Optimus is envisioned, could cook for you, could clean, could do menial tasks, and yes, in theory, could have conversations and alleviate boredom and loneliness. Now, do I want to live in a world where everyone is sitting at home on a couch with a robot butler doing absolutely everything, and we're just sitting in the couch doing nothing all day long, too lazy to get up to go to the grocery store? I don't know if I want to go that far. But it's also easy for me to say, oh, we should just all get off our duffs and do whatever we want. I'm healthy. My legs work fine. My body works fine. But there may be a point when they don't. And while spending $20,000 or $30,000 for a robot is not in the budget for a lot of Americans and most people around the world, it's certainly dramatically less expensive than if you had to pay even low wages for a home healthcare worker, even 20 hours a week, when you compound that over a couple of year period. So it is going to be a massive, massive savings of money and perhaps a dramatic increase in the quality of life for people who need care. Also, frankly, just for people like me who are really lazy. I don't like to make my bed. I don't like to wash dishes. I don't like to dust. I don't like to clean a garage. So there's certainly a part of me that does fantasize about a robot, not for any lascivious purpose, but just for sheer laziness. Now, I'm reading Tim Wu's latest book about technology, and he puts his finger on something I've thought about in the past, but never really had the idea crystallized in my mind. He points out that the biggest success that a company like Amazon, a platform like Amazon, has tapped into is it really harvests an extreme force in American society that we don't typically think of as a whole sector and as a whole driving force of commerce. But it's this laziness. Tim Wu correctly points out that so much of Amazon's success is just tapping in to this fundamental human drive, not for lust, not for power, not for greed, uh, not for any of these things we normally think of as huge motivating powers of humanity, but for the desire to be lazy. Yes, Amazon is great at tapping in to all of our desires to be lazy. I could shop around for this new couch on 10 different platforms, look at 20 different reviews, compare pricing and shipping cost everywhere, or I could be lazy, type in shopping sofa, see what the best price, what the highest rating is on Amazon, one click, buy it, free shipping. Yes, Amazon has mastered the art of tapping into human beings' laziness to their credit. So they're not just logistics experts, which Amazon is, they're also experts at tapping into this fundamental human weakness. And I recognize it in myself. It's a weakness I have. Someone shows me how to be lazier to get something done. I'm all in. And that's why I do think ultimately, whether it's Elon Musk robot or someone else's robot, we are going to live in a world of robots. Because once you've gone to having someone else clean up your dirty dishes or make your bed, it's going to be very hard to ever going back to the old ways. All that and more today on Filtered. Thanks so much for joining me. We have a lot of big topics today on this action-packed Sunday. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. And we are back. Thanks so much for joining me today. We've got a lot of fun stories to go through. And thank you for being here. If you'd like to participate, post your comments and I will read your comments on air if you're joining us live. If you're watching this on demand or listening on any podcast platform, please leave your comments. I do typically read and respond to all comments, ideally in the first 24 hours, but certainly generally in the first 72 hours. So thanks so much for joining us, whether you are on TikTok watching us today, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, Rumble. We're on pretty much all of them, as well as Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and all major podcasting platforms. Let's dive right into issue 2. Investor Mark Mobius calls an AI bubble, but should you listen? Legendary emerging markets investor Mark Mobius, age 89, says top AI names could fall 30 to 40% before resuming a long-term uptrend. He points to stretched valuations and a capex binge, and he favors emerging markets right now, especially China and India. Here's the context, though. Most investors miss. Authority bias is powerful. A big resume is not a risk model. We remember the famous name and forget the decade-long scoreboard. If you had put $100,000 into a broad emerging markets fund for the last 10 years, something like a Mark Mobius fund, you'd be sitting at roughly $192,000 today. Hey, that sounds like a lot of money, a big win, right? But if you had simply bought an S&P 500 index fund, you'd be around $412,000 today. That's an opportunity cost of about $220,000 for believing the emerging market comeback story, while the S&P quietly compounded. Now, this doesn't mean Mobius can't nail a pullback. Market's correct. It means don't outsource your brains to anyone's legend. If you plan to buy the dip, pre-commit your rules now. What will you buy? How much will you add per 10% drawdown? What evidence, cash flow growth, margin durability, CapEx payback will tell you AI spending is translating into durable earnings? Respect the experience, yes, but invest by rules, not by aura. What's the bottom line here? What's the real message? When a famous investment guru like Mark Mobius makes a prediction, everything's going to crash or go down by 40 or 50%, be skeptical. They're sometimes right, but most of the time they're wrong. They're getting that attention because of past successes and just because it's a dramatic prediction. Let's dig a little deeper here. So, this is a business show, but it's not an investment advice show. So, let me be very clear. I'm not telling you ignore investment guru Mark Mobius. He might be right. What I want to do here is dig a little deeper to give you a sense of why you're even hearing his prediction. First of all, he's famous. He's been around for decade after decade after decade. He's had a lot of good years. He's made a lot of money for himself and for his investors. I remember it has to be 30 years ago, 40 years ago. There were all these TV commercials of this really cool looking, bold guy living out of a plane, his private jet flying around to emerging markets. And the company he was working for at the time, I believe it was Templeton, really branded him. And he became a legend. He made a lot of money. He's fabulously wealthy. But that doesn't mean he's right today. Now, he's only a few months away from being 90. Doesn't mean he can't still be a good investor. Look at Warren Buffett. But it does mean you shouldn't necessarily place faith in him just because he's had successes before. Now, I mentioned in the newsread, if you look at the last 10 years, if you had believed in Mark Mobius, put your money with him, if you invested $100,000 with him versus the S&P 500, you would have lost $220,000 compared to what you would have gotten not by having a fancy investment guru, a fancy financial manager managing your money, but if you had just gone into a plain old vanilla, boring S&P 500, a Vanguard index fund for the S&P 500, the sort of thing that if you mention it at a cocktail party, everyone falls asleep. You don't get invited back because they think you're so boring. It's always exciting to talk about, oh, I've got this great guru who's mystical and flies around the world, and he told me to buy this stock, and look how well I'm doing. You'll get a lot more attention that way. The other reason I call this to your attention is because it's essential when you are reading financial media, when you are watching financial podcasts and TV shows and CNBCs. There is always a bias in favor of the big dramatic call. So when someone with a famous name like Mark Mobius says, technology stocks are set to fall by 40%, it's dramatic, it's interesting, it's bold, it's provocative, it's therefore interesting copy. It makes for a nice headline on a website or a paper newspaper or a Barron's magazine if you still read something in that format. But it doesn't make it any more likely to happen. And I want you to realize that we are all affected by biases. There's a lot of conversation these days about so-called media bias, but the biggest media bias isn't necessarily a left-right bias or a partisan bias. It's a bias in favor of the most interesting story, the most dramatic story. So when a Mark Mobius says the market's going to crash by 40%, or when a Robert Kiyosaki says, abandon the stock market, put everything in real estate, remember, that's the media displaying its bias in favor of the biggest, boldest, most dramatic thing. Again, I'm not here to give you stock advice. But I can tell you, if you constantly buy and sell based on what famous people tell you is the most dramatic thing and the sort of thing that gets them attention, you are likely to buy and sell your way to massive financial losses. That I can pretty much guarantee you. The other thing is certainly Mark Mobius is not the only investor these days or market analyst to say, well, hey, we're in an AI bubble. It's going to crash. It's overinflated. Uh, Look at something like Tesla, which is absurdly overinflated, and its stock price bears no relation even to other AI companies. So there's more and more conversation about, is there an AI bubble? Are we settled for a crash? But let's not forget history. We heard this again and again and again in 1997 by many who said there's an internet bubble, there's an internet bubble, there's an internet bubble. So if you sold everything in 97, you lost a lot of money. If you sold everything in 1998, you lost a lot of money. You sold everything in 1999 and you got out of the market, you lost a lot of money because they were 3 years too early. Market didn't crash till 2000. So that's the real problem with listening to so-called experts, especially famous experts, especially ones who got it right the last downturn, is they're always looking for something to validate their mindset that they are right and everyone else in the market is wrong. And therefore, if something is up, it's ready for a crash. Things do go up and down, but not necessarily the same time period that these so-called experts are predicting. So what's the real takeaway? I'm a huge believer in what John Bogle says. He's the founder of Vanguard. And his whole rationale of investing, the whole concept behind these index funds is you and I are too stupid to time the market. Now, I'm sorry if that sounds condescending. It's actually the opposite of condescending. It's the ultimate in humility, because John Bogle didn't think he was smart enough to pick winners and losers consistently. The whole point of an index fund is you're essentially putting your ego aside and saying, I'm not smart enough to know which stock is going to go up, which stock is going to go down. Therefore, I'm going to really diversify and spread risk out over typically hundreds of companies. Or if it's the S&P 500, you're spreading your risk out across 500 companies. And at that point, some stocks go up, some stocks go down. What you're betting on is the entire market going up. People who've made that bet over the last 10 years have won. Have there been down years? Yes. But over the long haul, the last 10 years, the last 20 years, the last 70 years, people who bet on the market in general have done much, much better than most people who pick and choose particular stocks or even particular industries. And that's the number one guiding principle I have in my own investment life. I would like you to not necessarily follow my investment strategy, because I'm not giving you an investment strategy. I would like you to check your own biases. Every person I know, for the most part, thinks that they're smart enough to outsmart the market. And any one day, any one stock pick, they could. It's always about the long term. Where do you stand? Because here's the one thing we know with absolute certainty. 95% of so-called professional managers, money managers, people who have MBAs from Harvard and Stanford and Columbia, people who have Bloomberg terminals on their desk, people who go to lunch with informed journalists and CEOs, people who have inside information, 95% of them over a 20, 25-year period do not beat the index. Whatever index they compare themselves, certainly the S&P 500 index, they don't beat the index once you factor in their fees. So anytime you think you can make a prediction about a particular stock or even a particular sector going up or down a lot, and that you're going to be smarter than most people, what you're really saying is you're going to be better than 95 out of 100 people who do this professionally for a living. Now, let me ask you, if you played poker for a few times, and you go to the World Series of Poker, and all of a sudden you're playing poker with people who are full-time professional poker players. They play in tournaments around the world every week, all year long. You might be confident that you could win a game here or there. You might be confident you could even win a round. But are you confident you would beat 95 out of 100 of these professional poker players every time? That's essentially what you're doing every single time you pick a particular stock, buying or selling a stock, or for that matter, listening to an expert, no matter how successful they've been in the past, on which way the market is going. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filtered. This is the show where we look at the top 5 business stories, technology stories, economic stories, and cultural stories of the day. We filter them through the lens of communication skills, human biases, and personal development skills, all with the goal of making you more successful in your personal life as well as your professional life. More in just a moment. Want to communicate like a pro? Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Millions have already transformed their speaking skills. Why not you? This show doesn't run on a lot of corporate sponsorships or big media backing. It runs on caffeine and your support. If you like what you're hearing and want to say thanks, you can buy me a coffee. Really. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. It's quick, it's easy, and yes, it helps cover editing, hosting, and staying relatively ad-free for as long as possible. Buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. Your $3.95 makes a real difference. Want live coaching from me? Bonus episodes? Full course access? It's all waiting at tjwalker.com/members. Join now. Welcome back to Filtered. Meta's scam ad problem and the profit behind it. Reuters reports that internal Meta documents projected roughly 10% of 2024 revenue, about $16 billion, coming from ads tied to scams and banned goods. An estimated 15 billion higher risk scam ads showed daily across Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. The files describe a steep ban threshold, automated systems waiting until they're about 95% certain before shutting an advertiser. And below that, penalty bids that make suspect ads more expensive to run. Meta disputes the framing, calling those figures rough and, quote, overly inclusive, and says user scam reports are down sharply with large volumes of scam content removed this year. Regulators are circling, and Meta has set internal targets to shrink violating revenue over the next 2 years. Integrity costs money. So do fines and reputational damage. The outcome that matters is fewer victims, not prettier dashboards. Okay, what's the real message here? Meta is getting bigger and bigger and greedier and sloppier. They're selling you garbage. They're selling ads. They're pushing out fake ads, fake products, and fooling you if you're an advertiser too. It's time for some stronger regulatory oversight of this quasi-monopoly. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. So it's the nature of any company to want to be as big and as powerful as possible. It's just traditionally, if you believe in free market enterprise, which I do, and that envisioned by Adam Smith and others, you have to have some government there to create rules so that there's actually competition. The whole point of free market capitalism is competition. You don't have capitalism if one company is essentially completely controlling the marketplace. Now, I'm not saying Facebook controls every ad dollar spent, but between them and Google, that's pretty much the whole game. What that means is they can get away with a lot. And every single day, Facebook faces a dilemma. Do we spend more money on actual human people to review these ads to make sure they're not complete scams, frauds, flim-flams? Or Do we just fire thousands of people and let the money come in the cash register, ka-ching, 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 have the ads go out, and it fools our users, tricks them, bamboozles them, steals their money, gives them shoddy products that might damage them? Well, hey, too bad. We make more money than ever because we fired all the people who would normally investigate the ads. That is essentially the mentality of really all the big tech companies that are in the ad game. But Facebook seems particularly egregious. So again, according to Reuters, it's $15 billion in sketchy ads. And hardly anyone is even talking about it because there's just the assumption of, well, yeah, there's always going to be fraud in advertising. Well, there doesn't have to be this much. Now, the regulators in the United States and the United Kingdom are scrutinizing this, especially as it relates to financial scam. I would say right now, Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, they're not too worried about US regulators because, Zuck is there with the campaign contributions for who anytime asked. He's there to give contributions to anything else. He's there to give toast at the White House to dear leaders. So I don't think he's too worried about a strong regulatory pushback in the United States. United Kingdom is a little bit different. What's the real message for you and me? If you are an entrepreneur, you could be a one-person consultant. You could be an author, an expert. You're going to be tempted to use Facebook ads. I've used Facebook ads before. For some people in the past, it was wildly effective. But I think those days are mostly over. Facebook has gotten to be so big for its britches, so arrogant, so entitled. We can do whatever we want, especially now that there's no regulatory oversight in Washington. We can do whatever we want. And our clients have to take whatever slop we give them. Our advertising clients, they got to just deal with the fact that not just 1% fraud, maybe 10%, heck, maybe 50%. They don't like it, tough for them. Our users have to take it. Our users tell us they want to see more posts from their closest friends and family, but we just continue giving them AI slop from Hollywood with links to scams. They got to take it. What are they going to do? Quit Facebook? Ha, ha, ha. We got them. It's cost too much for the average person to shut down a Facebook account. And hey, I'm on Facebook right now. We are simulcasting and streaming this on my personal Facebook page as well as my business Facebook page. So I understand it. I'm a part of this system too, where I feel locked in. But at some point, advertisers need to realize they have to vote with their pocketbook. I mean, I personally don't do a lot of advertising in general now, but I'm certainly not going to advertise on Facebook. If you do advertise on Facebook, I'd love to hear from you. If you feel like it's still an efficient buy, if you can actually monitor sales where you're getting a clear-cut return on investment from your advertising on Facebook, I would love to hear from you. I remain open-minded. You can post your comments right here if you're watching or listening to this live. If you're watching this on demand, post your comments and I'd like to read about it. Let's look at the comments coming in right now. Let's see. Bertrand is saying hello. And Bertrand says, TJ, I love watching your show. You're so good and knowledgeable. Well, thank you, Bertrand. I appreciate your thoughts. Your news critics are very high quality. I learned so much. And thanks, Bertrand. If you don't mind telling me which particular insights or topics do you find resonate with you the most? You have an opinion on all the subjects you discuss in your live shows. You're very wise. Well, I don't know if I thank you very much. I don't know if I'm very wise, but I do select topics only to talk about, only if I feel like I have, not just an opinion, because everybody has opinions on everything. What I'm trying to do is select topics where I feel I have an opinion that has reasoned analysis and a perspective that maybe isn't obvious to most people, especially if it relates to my own experiences or skill sets as someone who's worked for 40 years training political figures and billionaire fund managers and CEOs and civic leaders and presidents of countries and billionaire sports team managers on how to communicate effectively and how to have personal development habits and how to be successful. I'm pulling from that background, looking at the news, filtering it through that lens of my own area of expertise with the idea of helping people like you and others watching and listening to this program to improve. Because it's easy just to read news, watch news, get bummed out. It goes in one ear and out the other, doom scrolling. What I'm hoping to do with this show, and my pledge to you, is spend a little time with me each day, and you'll not only learn more about some important stories going on in the news, but you'll learn more about yourself and how you can be more effective, more successful in your personal life as well as your professional life. So Bertrand, that's the thesis behind this. But and I see that you are watching this on Facebook. So for no other reason, thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. I am still thankful for your invention. I still use it. Doesn't mean there couldn't be better oversight, doesn't mean there couldn't be more respect for users as well as advertisers. We'll be back in just a moment. And Bertrand, if you could do me one favor, please leave a review for this show on any podcasting platform. I don't think there's a way of, other than the comments on the Facebook section, I don't think there's a way of leaving a review on Facebook. But if you do use Spotify or Apple Podcast or iHeartRadio, then please leave a review there. Purple Haze writes in and says, a disturbing habit of not voting the way I want him to vote. I'm not sure what your reference is for that topic. But anyway, we got lots more coming up in the show today, more issues plus a full grab bag today. So don't go anywhere. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill and it's trainable. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40 plus years of real world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Welcome back to Filtered. Thanks so much for joining me today. We are live. It is Sunday afternoon, November 9th, 2025. If you are watching this live, thanks so much for spending some time with us. You can post your comments live to share with us. If you're watching this on demand, post your comments. I typically respond to comments and questions there. A few of you writing in just now, I appreciate your thoughts. Dr. Anmal Panda, it writes in today from LinkedIn, says, good morning from India. A bit out of context comment from your talk. I learned a lot from you teaching news, reading on TV journalism to my students. So Dr. Amal, thank you so much for stopping by today. I'm glad you're learning something from it. Please let me know what you teach your students and also if I can help them in any way. By the way, I'm always happy to drop in and give at no cost lectures to journalism students, business students, communication students. So if I can help or be a part of anything in your class, please send me a direct message or post a comment. Would love to hear from you. Bertrand also writes, practice makes a good speech or even 5 minutes a day. Bertrand, you're absolutely right. I appreciate those of you saying I'm articulate and I communicate effectively on TV. I'm here to tell you, I have no special talents. There's nothing I do on this program or in this podcast that you can't do if you simply did it every day. I wasn't a natural born smooth talker. It only happened by doing it regularly, seeking out every opportunity I could. And these days, it's never been easier because you have an opportunity every single day. There's nothing stopping you from doing exactly what I'm doing every day, which is speak out on YouTube, on TikTok, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on any format, audio or video, whatever you're comfortable with. A few more comments, then we have to dive into this next story relating to debt. Every day says AI, using AI for planning has saved me so much time. I think that relates to our first topic today on how AI is being incorporated into this Optimus robots that Elon Musk is pushing. Gucci says absolutely money plays a huge part as well, relating to, I think, the story on Facebook. Guyard says, whenever I'm not gambling, my body starts itching uncontrollably till I gamble. I'm not addicted though. I'm I'm not quite sure if you start itching just by not gambling. Look, life is a gamble. I'm a big believer that you should gamble for things where the odds are in your favor. If you gamble your money, for example, by spending your money on an education, often, not always, but often you get a return on your investment. If you gamble your money on buying an S&P 500 index fund, on average for the last 25 years, you made about 10% a year. And compounding over time, you could have really paid for a nice retirement. So those sorts of gambling things I'm in favor of, but not what we see now where every sport, every election return, what the weather's going to be tomorrow is a gamble. Peachy says, what type of work did you used to do? Well, the work I used to do is the same work I do now is I help people communicate effectively. So I give public speaking training, media training, presentation skills training, as well as personal development training. So I have 12 million student enrollments around the world for my online personal development courses. And you see those mentioned in the ads going during the commercial breaks of this show. So I try to incorporate that into the lessons. Now, Peachy also writes a question, were you an accountant? And maybe that's the glasses. No, I've never been an accountant and do not have the patience for that. So no, I'm not an accountant. I have studied some aspects of finance. I have in the past received a Series 7 and a Series 63 financial license. I'm not currently licensed. This is not a financial program. This is not professional financial advice. But I have worked in Wall Street before and have many, many Wall Street clients where I've done the training and preparation of CEOs before they go on places like CNBC and Fox Business News and Bloomberg. So I've been in that world for a long time. Okay, we got to dive right in to issue 4. Debt from your mortgage to big tech's AI. A lot of bills going on here. There's a push to explore a 50-year fixed mortgage as an affordability tool. Longer terms do lower the monthly payment, but they raise lifetime interest and slow equity build, especially since the typical homeowner moves in about 12 years. Meanwhile, DealBook, part of the New York Times, details how the artificial intelligence build out is being financed with a surge of complex borrowing. Commercial mortgage-backed securities tied to data centers, asset-backed deals, private credit, and off-balance sheet vehicles because CapEx is enormous while monetization may arrive later. Parallels to 1929 are fashionable, but the plumbing is different today. Fully amortized fixed rate mortgages, deposit insurance, and stronger bank capital rules now exist. So that part is better than 1929. 2 hard facts help anchor this. Federal debt as a share of GDP is far higher today than in the 1920s. Household debt service ratios, however, are still below their pre 2008 peak. That's a good thing. Debt can be a bridge to growth or a very long tether. The difference is timing, safeguards, and cash flow reality. So, what's the real message here? This idea floated by some that we can make housing more affordable by having 50-year mortgages, that's frankly crazy. The chances of paying that off are slim and nil. At some point, there's really no difference between owning a house and renting if you can't own it for half a century. That's not the solution to our housing affordability crisis. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. Now, I'm not the only one concerned about rising debt in every aspect of our economy, especially outside the banking system, with so many non-bank banks and so much crypto nonsense going on, so much private equity. It does make a lot of people worried that our entire economy is a house of cards and therefore easier to crumble. I'm not making any predictions here. I'm smart enough to be humble enough to know I can't see the future. Anyone who tells you they can see categorically the future is deluded. Now, occasionally people do predict the future, and they're right. Was it because they were so smart? Or was it because they were lucky? Or because they were smart enough to see various issues coming into play? They saw the sequence right once, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work every time. Now, there is a problem in our American economy specifically in that more and more households are really running high in debt, credit card debt, not able to pay their credit card debt, not able to pay quite often their automobile debt. It's compounded by things like if you're a federal worker or you're an air traffic controller, you haven't gotten paid in the last month. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck, then they're going to be skipped payments. Now, you typically don't lose your house if you fail to meet a mortgage payment once, but certainly doesn't help your credit rating. Let's look at some more facts here. This con- this concept floated by some in Washington that hey, let's just have 50-year mortgages. It's really ignoring the fundamental problem that for decades and decades, until about 20 or so years ago, the average price of a house in America was roughly 2.5, 3 times an annual income. Now it's like 7 or 8 times an annual income. It just isn't adding up. Now, it's for many reasons. For starters, so many communities have created zoning rules making it impossible, just impossible to build new housing. I think that's the number one thing. And here's where I'm going to offend some of you. I am a sane, sensible centrist. So this is one area where conservatives are absolutely right, ridiculing and mocking so-called liberal democratically run states. You look at a place like California, especially San Francisco. You look at a place like New York, and housing prices are absolutely insane. And unless you're a hedge fund millionaire or billionaire, you're kind of priced out of ever having affordable housing. And in places like Texas, Florida, where I live, there's so many fewer zoning rules. It's much easier for developers to build, and housing costs are much lower, although they're pretty high in South Florida, where I live now. So I don't think the issue is a financing problem. The issue is a supply problem. We live in a country where once people have their house, they say, I got mine. I want to do everything I can to boost the value of what is mine. And the number one way to do that is to restrict supply. Because if there are more people moving into your community every day and there are no new houses and you want to put your house on the market to go retire in a desert island somewhere, well, you're going to make more money because more people in, fewer supply, you can charge more. That's good for you individually. It's horrible for society. And it's why so many people in America today are feeling extremely frustrated because they cannot afford a house. And the idea of going into more debt and more debt and more debt isn't very appealing. Now, we also talked about in the news read of what's happening in the artificial intelligence world, the technology world, because more and more of these gigantic tech hubs, these the server farms, the energy farms to give energy to the service. It's all being paid for by debt. It's going to work out for some because a handful of companies are likely to be the big winners in artificial intelligence. But if it's like anything else in the history of new technology, whether it's the internet itself, whether it's telecommunications, whether it's radio stations or TV stations or railroads or automobiles, for every winner, there's a few hundred losers. And that debt could cause massive problems for the economy. So, what's my message to you? Let's switch gears to things at a personal level. It's very easy to get caught up in good times. The stock market's going up, 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 as it has been. It's very easy to think I'm rich and I'm going to get richer and money is easier than ever. And why not go into debt? I'm just going to be richer next month. You've got to really watch out for that mentality. Now, can some people use debt very effectively to become extraordinarily wealthy? Yeah. But most people are really not good at debt. Debt consumes them, especially credit card debt. Now, I'm a big fan, frankly, of having zero debt with a couple of exceptions. If you don't have wealthy parents, then having some debt for college can sometimes really pay off. If you have a family and you don't wait as long as I didn't have a family till I was 50. But if you're a normal person and let's say you have a family at age, 28, 29, 31, and you want to have a house and you don't want to have to move different rentals every year, yeah, you may need to buy a house and you may need to have debt. Very few people just have a giant lump sum of $600,000 sitting around to buy a house with all cash. So you may need some debt for that. But beyond that, be careful. You don't need to have debt for a car just because you need the latest car. I'm a big fan of buying used cars, buying the least expensive car you have. Now, I will give you full disclosure. I do have one car in my family now where we do have it on debt based on the advice of my accountant that for tax purposes, it would be irrational not to. But I didn't buy the car on debt with a car loan because I couldn't afford it. I did it for for not even cash flow, for strategic tax purposes. I urge you, you're going to sleep better at night the less debt you have. If you want to spend money, spend it on investments that give you income. Spend it on growth stocks. Spend it on S&P 500 index funds rather than buying things on credit. I do think, regardless of what happens to the national economy, your own economy is what's crucial. And telling yourself, let me have what I want today, and I'll worry about paying it later, is a way to dig yourself in a hole so that your future just isn't as positive and upbeat as it could be. So please keep that in mind. We've got more coming up, especially some of you are not going to know what I'm talking about, but if you have any kind of kids in your neighborhood, in your own home, and they like to mention this phrase 6'7", 6'7", we're going to talk about that in just a moment in the next issue. But first, let's take a few more comments from you. Jules writes in from YouTube. You've changed the format of your channel. You were standing. Can you explain your thought that went through your thinking process? I love the news and comment format. Well, thank you. I will explain that in just a moment. U.S. and Canada are in debt. What's the future for young? So there is a difference between countries being in debt and individuals, because a country is in debt to itself and it's self-perpetuating. The United States has a specific, unique position to the world of debt because we can print our own money, and the US dollar is the reserve currency around the world. So that gives us a lot of advantages. I personally am not worried about the overall debt of the United States. I do think it's a problem to continue cutting taxes and not ever cut expenses, when in fact we may need to raise some taxes or reduce some spending. I do think in general, it would be good for our country and most countries to run a surplus when the economy is going well, and to have a deficit in recessionary years. That's what I think is the most important thing. So, to your question, Jules, you're right. Thank you for being a longtime viewer here. I started a show about almost 2 years ago where I was standing, a different studio, but some of the same backdrop. I did that because the focus there was really exclusively on communication skills and tying things into speaking. And most speakers stand when they speak. So I did it to give myself more energy, to make it more interesting, moving around. There are some hosts like Jim Cramer of CNBC, who's constantly moving, and certainly a lot of the hosts on ESPN are standing and moving. So I thought it would give greater energy and excitement to the show, and where I could demonstrate more body language issues related to communication skills. I was not doing as much pure business news analysis in that old show as I am today. The show Filtered is only about 2.5 months old. So this is a different type of show where it's first and foremost about analyzing news through the filter of communication and personal development skills. But the big reason, and I don't know if I've talked about this before, but since you asked, I'll be transparent. I stopped standing as my feet started hurting. Now, I had strong rubber cushions, but I had a real problem with my feet for about a year. And finally, I was diagnosed, believe it or not, this is going to sound ridiculous, with wearing the wrong shoe size. I have a 10 and a half foot on my right foot. My left foot is a size 11. And so you think, okay, well, just wear a size 11. Well, I had an expert at a fantastic shoe store called Foot Solutions who analyzed things better than a podiatrist, who told me, okay, TJ, I'm measuring your foot. And yeah, it's true. You have a 10 and a half on your right foot and 11 on the left, but your arch is the size of a 12 shoe. So if you don't wear a size 12 shoe, you are going to be scrunching your toes and the top third of your foot in a way that's going to cause pain. Now, I don't know if that's actually what happened, but I did switch to size 12 shoes. I stopped wearing Crocs, which I had been wearing almost exclusively since I moved to Florida, and actually do have on now underneath my desk. I stopped wearing them most of the time, and I stopped standing for the show. And now my feet feel as good as they did as when I was 10 years old. But thank you so much for paying attention to that nuance. I do appreciate it. We've got more in a moment on our last big issue of the day. Stay tuned. Filtered is brought to you by the following. Get the deeper takes I don't post anywhere else. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess and stay in the loop. For years, people have asked how they could get one-on-one coaching from me inexpensively. Well, now you can, anytime, anywhere with the TJ Walker AI clone. It's like having me in your pocket, ready to help you prep for a speech, polish a pitch, or calm your nerves before a big meeting. You talk to it, it responds like I would, based on my real-world coaching of thousands of leaders and communicators. Check it out at tjwalker.ai. It's not just smart, it's personal. Want to support the show? Skip the ads and buy me a coffee. That's buymeacoffee.com/TJWalker. And we are back. Thanks so much for joining me today. And Jules also says, new shoes, new show. Yes, I guess that's a way of putting it. I am wearing new shoes as well as orthotics too. But I think the main thing, the other thing I did, based on the advice of a podiatrist, is I do stretching exercises every single day with my feet, one way and then the other like that. And it really keeps things stretched out. Let's dive right in to this last big issue of the day. 6-7. The inside joke that won word of the year. Dictionary.com's word of the year is 6-7, a viral in-joke that teens and preteens repeat, gesture to, and refuse to define. The trail runs from Skrilla's 2024 track, Doot Doot 6'7", to TikTok remixes, NBA height riffs, and the 6'7" kid hand juggling clip. Even dictionary.com shrugs. Paired with the gesture, it can suggest so-so or nothing at all. That's the point. It's a password, not a paragraph. It spreads because it's cheap to copy, fun to signal, and confounding to adults. In a world where brands try to buy culture, kids still mint their own. Two numbers, one wink. So, what's the real message here? If there are kids in your life constantly saying 6'7", 6'7", 6'7", what does it mean? All it really means is, hey, we know how to annoy you and we're going to do it. And it's a little insider secret thing. It's only for us kids. And you know what? It works. It is annoying. Let's dig a little deeper here. One of the fascinating things about human beings is in a world where it seems like algorithms are running everything and so much is controlled by big money ad campaigns and marketing campaigns and secret lobbying campaigns, every so often something just takes off like wildfire and it's inexplicable. No one's making money off of kids shouting 6'7" repeatedly, randomly, all over the place. There's no big tech platform that is pushing this message again and again and again. There's no one selling books by marketing 6'7". No one is gaining political power. There's no 6'7" party anywhere. It's not one of these things like someone shouting Baba Booey because they're a fan of Howard Stern. It's not a part of a fan group for any one celebrity. It's just something that popped up. As I mentioned to you, some origins are because of a musical track from a band I've never heard of, but doesn't mean they're not a great band or singer. It means I'm old because I don't know who it is. But their track in 2024, Doot Doot, somehow mentioned something 6'7". It relates to a particular basketball player who's 6'7". And now it has just taken off where kids are constantly looking for any excuse to say 6'7", 6'7". Now, apparently in some schools, middle schools in particular, teachers have tried to ban it to no luck. And it just makes it that much more enjoyable. Does it mean anything in an absolute profound way? No, I don't think so. To me, it's just another one of these interesting examples of how sometimes human language morphs into different things. Memes can spread. And it's nice to know that we as human beings are not always 100% pre-programmed based on culture, based on someone telling us to do things, based on a set of rules, based on an algorithm from Google or Apple or YouTube or Facebook. Sometimes just silly stuff happens. And I think really the only response is to just sit back and laugh. Although I am sympathetic to any parent or teacher out there who says, enough already. It's not very funny. I don't think it's supposed to be funny, other than it's always going to be fun for teenagers, preteens to irritate adults. I know that's certainly the mantra in my house. Okay, that concludes the main section of our show, looking at the top 5 stories today. But I also like to look at some grab bag issues every day. These are issues that we're not going to go as deeply into, but warrant some mention and some perspective. First issue: interfaith on the campaign trail, hope versus pressure. According to the Associated Press, the vice president told a campus crowd he hopes his Hindu wife, his Hindu spouse, may one day share his Christian faith, while saying she has no plans to convert and that he'll love and support her regardless. This is J.D. Vance, obviously, the current vice president of the United States. Now, the comments ignited a broader conversation about interfaith marriages. Counselors say success rests on respect, explicit agreements about children's upbringing, and zero coercion. The Hindu American Foundation criticized, his wife is Hindu, criticized what it sees as one true path framing. Catholic scholars note the church asks couples who marry Catholic to raise children in the faith, but forbids pressuring a spouse to convert. Interfaith unions are common and healthy when consent and clarity come before conversion. Okay, I don't want to make too big a deal out of this. There have been some who rallied to J.D. Vance's defense and said, well, look, he said he loved and respected his wife. That's a good thing. He's certainly been extraordinarily respectful to his wife in all public interactions that I've seen, has spoken glowingly of her, talked about how brilliant she is, made him a better man. So he certainly seems to be sort of a modern husband and married a woman who is extremely accomplished, successful in her career. There is this one issue. Here's the question I have for you to chew on. He did say that, when asked, does he basically hope that she will become a Christian one day? And he said, yes. I'm not attacking him for that, okay? And there have been some who've said, well, why is the Hindu American Foundation butting its nose in that? He didn't say anything awful. I just want to pose a question to you. Imagine if his wife had been asked, do you hope one day that your spouse, J.D. Vance, accepts your religion and therefore repudiates Jesus Christ? Because Jesus does not have a central role in the Hindu religion, okay? I understand there can be tolerance and broad but you can be a Hindu and not necessarily believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ or believe that that's the one true way to get into heaven, for example. So I bring that up to suggest, think about how if things would be if it were on the other foot. Would you be just as accepting for a politician or a political spouse or someone high profile to essentially say, yeah, I would like my spouse to adopt my religion and therefore get rid of Jesus? Because if you're okay on one side, you should just kind of be okay on the other side. I toss that out there. I would love to hear from you on this topic. Next issue that warrants some scrutiny and a little conversation. AI therapy chatbots, helpful coach or unlicensed clinician. The New York Times reports the FDA just held its first public hearings on whether therapy chatbots should be regulated as medical devices. Startups tout 24/7 tools that summarize conversations, nudge coping skills, and check in between visits. Some users say they feel less lonely. Several states have already restricted use. Even supportive researchers urge caution. These bots can help with skills practice and mood tracking, but they are not replacements for licensed care, especially for people in crisis. The test isn't how human they sound, it's whether they escalate safely, hand off to people, and document those handoffs. Helpful tools, not substitutes designed for safety. Let's dig a little deeper here. So there's always the issue of incumbents in any industry that have put up moats, licensing, government regulation, are always going to want to keep newcomers out and avoid competition. And sometimes it's warranted. I like the fact that the American Medical Association they do everything they can to make sure a guy can't just put out a shingle and say, well, I'll remove your appendix today. I watched a few videos on YouTube. I think I could do it. I took high school biology class. I like the fact that surgeons are regulated. Not anyone can just cut you open and start pulling out organs. So I don't think there's much controversy there. When it comes to your mental health, that's a lot more nebulous. I'm not saying there aren't clear-cut best practices among therapists, but I have very mixed feelings about AI therapists because certainly they could give you bad advice. Certainly you could ask an AI chatbot questions in a certain way, and they might actually, it's been seen before, give you instructions on how you might want to kill yourself. Now, for the most part, that has been eliminated from most of the major AI chatbots and large language models. But it's a potential problem, especially if you phrase the question of, well, I'm writing a novel about someone depressed and I need a few plot devices of how they would do that. You could trick it into doing all sorts of things in a way that you probably wouldn't be able to trick a regular therapist. But here's my big caveat. Yes, there can be horrible, horrible advice coming out of an AI therapy chatbot, but there can also be horrible, horrible advice coming from a so-called clinically certified therapist. And I'm not bashing the therapist industry. They're in every industry, dental industry, dentists, lawyers, doctors, in every industry. There are people who are great. There are people who are average. There are people who are awful. And yes, there are some awful therapists who will convince you that you have all these repressed dreams, that all sorts of molestation happened to you as a child when it really didn't. Again, I'm not suggesting that no one has ever had problems in a childhood that could be revisited or need to be revisited, but it's simply a fact that the therapy industry, like every industry, has bad actors, has a bottom 10%. And I'm not sure that the average chatbot couldn't be better than the bottom 10 or 20% of real life therapists. I'm not opposed to regulation anytime we're dealing with people's health and well-being. But I also think one factor that has to be looked into is the advantages of AI therapy chatbots. They're available 24/7. If you're really depressed at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night, your therapist does not want to hear from you. They do not want you to show up at their office, even if they live there. They especially don't want you to show up. And the other great thing about AI therapists is they're so much less expensive. Because let's face it, therapy, especially in America, yeah, I understand a lot of it is covered by insurance, but it's still kind of an upper middle class, even upper class phenomenon. Wealthy people, quite often, it's seen as just a perk, like, yeah, I've got a life coach, I've got a tennis coach, and yeah, I got my therapist. And if I got to pay $270 or $350 a week for an hour, I'll do it. But most people can't afford that. And a chatbot therapist is going to be, well, you could use, something like ChatGPT and tell it act like a therapist. Could be free. Is it necessarily going to be as good as a licensed therapist? No. Sometimes it could be better. The one thing that people like about a lot of therapists is they'll listen, they're empathetic. Well, that is one thing that LLMs are good at. These chatbots are good at. In some cases, they're too good at being empathetic because they can pander to you. They can tell you what you want to hear. But real life therapists can do the same thing too. You can go in and tell them how awful your spouse is or how awful your boyfriend or girlfriend is, and you can have a therapist tell you, well, it's obvious that your partner has this problem and this problem, then you need to get out. Well, maybe it's you, but your therapist doesn't want to tell you that. The chat bots don't necessarily want to tell you about that. So in that case, it's kind of a draw. I think that it warrants attention. Some people may want to experiment with it. You may want to try a real life therapist as well as a chatbot therapist. I do not think it should be reflexively banned. I also think it's one of the things that regulation is going to have a hard time dealing with. Maybe you can crack down on, and I'm just making this up, it may actually exist, but if there's something called a therapy.ai and it bills itself as a therapist for depressed people using AI chatbot, it may be possible to write a regulation saying you can't have that. But there's nothing preventing anyone from going to ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini or any artificial intelligence LLM and just say, hey, I want you to act like a therapist now and tell me what you think of my particular situation and why I'm feeling down. And it will start giving you on many cases, a lot of good advice that synthesizes conventional wisdom on what good therapy is. So, like it or not, therapists are like many other industries these days. They are facing competition from artificial intelligence. They're facing competition from technology. We're all facing competition from technology. Who knows? Maybe I don't host my show tomorrow. My AI clone doesn't. Now, I do have an AI clone, so at least I would be the one firing myself for the day. But the real message for you is you've always got to be figuring out how to do something better than what technology can do. And if you are a therapist now, I urge you, you should be testing what you do on AI clones, and you should be testing what therapy apps are doing to see maybe it does some things better than you. Maybe some things worse, maybe things you need to advise your patients with, but maybe you can combine your own practice with an AI clone of yourself. I happen to think, and some of you may know this, but I have my own clone, tjwalker.ai. I've written books on how to create a digital clone, not specifically for the purposes of therapy, but I do think a therapist could easily train a clone on how they think, could give transcripts of just what they say from personal sessions, retaining all privacy for their clients, and essentially train a clone to answer the way they did to complement their treatment for a patient. Again, I'm not a licensed therapist, so you may say, oh, TJ, there's all sorts of legal problems with that. Okay, fine. But if you see a patient once a week for a couple of years, and you know they sometimes have a crisis at 3 a.m., maybe there's something, either your chatbot or some therapy app or AI program that you think can at least help them in a moment of crisis when you're unavailable. So I think you need to think about that. I think all of us need to think about how can we constantly be the best we can be at what our unique skill set is, but also combine our skill sets with the absolute latest in technology. Okay, that concludes the grab bag section of the course. I want to close out on this Sunday the way we always do by taking questions from you. These questions come from my students, but you can post them as well. But the questions relate to communication skills and personal development. By the way, Incredible also writes in with a few comments. Religion related to the previous topic. Religion should be an individual think. We should all be good to others. Some people can praise the sun and others praise Charlie Kirk or Jesus. Everyone chooses. Religion is what people believe in. That's okay if they are kind people by doing so. Well, nice sentiments, Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate that. Let's go to our question today. This one comes from Catalina. She's a student in my complete storytelling course for speaking and presenting. The question is, in my job, most of my presentations focus on delivering results. How can I incorporate storytelling into these presentations when the main focus is just reporting the outcome for a specific project? This is a classic dilemma, Catalina, and I appreciate you posing that. If you're trying to give a presentation on results, so third quarter results just came out, you're up by 9%. You beat estimates by 2%. Fantastic. Great. The problem is those numbers are abstract. What is the one thing that happened in your business that actually generated growth? What was the one financial driver? Drill down. Let's say you are a Starbucks manager for a region and sales are up 9%. It's probably not equally 9% for every type of coffee and every type of sandwich. Maybe it's just that pumpkin spice latte that came out Halloween day. If that's the situation, tell the story about that pumpkin latte. So you can give the data as you would in any other presentation and say, proud to announce we're up 9% over on our revenues this quarter, and it's primarily because pumpkin latte. This thing is selling like crazy. I just went to Starbucks in my own neighborhood, as I do every day, and I saw 5 kids pulling on their mother and father's shirt saying, I have to have that pumpkin latte or I'm not going to school today. So they really love it, and it's sold out that day. So I'm just telling a story, but it's about a particular product. So there's always a story behind any number. If you want people to understand, remember your numbers in any business presentation, it's critical for you to tell a story. Go from the abstract level to a particular level. Talk about a particular problem, a solution, a real conversation with a real person, where you were, how it was resolved, how you felt about it. That's all a story is. So, Catalina, thank you so much for writing, and good luck with all of your data presentations. And remember, there's really no such thing as a data presentation or a PowerPoint presentation or a formal presentation or a technology presentation. There are only 2 types of presentations in the entire world. It's either interesting or boring for the audience. Always focus first and foremost on making an interesting presentation for your audience. I hope this has been an interesting presentation and time for you today. Thanks so much for watching. Please join us tomorrow. If you're watching this on demand, leave comments, sign up for notifications, subscribe. If you're listening to this on any podcasting platform, then please subscribe to the show or follow the show. Please leave a review. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.